In the heart of the vibrant city by the bay, meet a voice that's challenging the status quo. David Parker, author of A San Francisco Conservative and Rome 476. David Parker, a true San Franciscan with a conservative vision for the future, is a voice that resonates with our nation's founding fathers. Freedom from government, not with government. For 40 years, he taught in San Francisco's inner city schools, acquired a large real estate portfolio, and worked as a professional musician. The Dave Parker Sextet performs every week. It's time for a fresh perspective, one that values fiscal responsibility, individual responsibility. David Parker is not only an academic, his thumb is on the pulse of the economy. He brings real solutions to all the problems affecting our nation. Learn more at davidparkeressays.com and get a free chapter to any of his books, A San Francisco Conservative, Rome 476, and Income and Wealth. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Hello, I'm Tom Martin. Welcome to A San Francisco Conservative, the great show featuring yours truly, Tom Martin. I'm a lifelong journalist, having produced stories for ABC News, CBS News, CNN. I am coming to you from the East Coast, I must admit, but right there in San Francisco on KSFO radio and featured in the Epoch Times, often as a contributor with his popular column and his great books, is author David Parker. David is the author of 3 great books: Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and most recently, Rome 476. And David, I really want to jump right in. It's always great to see you. And I'm really excited because after so many months of hearing a lot of political analysts say the Republican Party is ascending, I think people are, getting out to the polls. The primaries are underway. And I think the Democratic Party is really going to rise to the occasion. What do you think?
They should, because they haven't. This is a perfect opportunity. A lot of people have misgivings about the candidate Donald Trump, but I believe Donald Trump is going to win, perhaps even in a landslide, because for the same reason that he won in 2016, the polls all showed on the day of election Hillary with a landslide victory. Some polls 90%. And then she didn't win because a consensus is forming in this nation, and people just lied in the polls. They were embarrassed to tell their friends that they were voting for Donald Trump, but they did because neither party has any intention of solving the problems that all Americans care about. 3 for sure: the high cost of healthcare, poorly performing public schools, lax law enforcement. And a moment arrived, and everyone realized, let's try something else. And the moment is almost identical. People may not want Donald Trump, but they're going to vote for him because he doesn't represent the Republican Party. And what Biden has to offer, or the Democrats have to offer, is to spend money on problems. And if they're not being cured, spend more money. That's not a solution. That's never addressing the problems.
Yeah. David, I have to jump in and say, I got my start, as a journalist covering politics in Washington, D.C. And it sounds to me like you're suggesting that what the journalists have been telling the American public all these years is not really accurate, that there's like a disconnect there. So it'll be curious to see. You could be right. But at least I take some comfort in the fact that, Joe Biden seems to have assembled some really strong constituencies: the African-American community, Hispanic voters, blue-collar workers, and so on. They've been Democrats for decades and decades. And, I really think they're going to put him in the White House.
You may think that, but that's not what's going to happen. George W. Bush, before he was president, ran for governor of Texas, and he beat a very popular candidate, Ann Richards, moderate, a woman. No reason not to vote for Ann Richards, but he said to the Latin community, "You're a conservative community. I'm a conservative. You're patriotic. You don't understand. You come here and you see liberals bashing America, and you don't understand it. Why are you voting? They're just using you." And he won. And it didn't hurt that he spoke in fluent Spanish during his campaign.
Yeah.
So that is the future. And
Yeah. Do you think that's
African
starting to
Americans
happen?
are also becoming a Republican. Is Democratic Party is finished in 30 years for sure.
Wow.
Less
Amazing.
than.
Yeah. Amazing. And one of the qualities I love about your books, I mentioned your 3 books, Income and Wealth, The San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476, is that, I've been so conditioned over, the past few decades to cover, the events of the day, and we're really laser focused on those events of the day. But in your books, you bring up chapters of history that would really put all these things in context. I mean, it's really, really very powerful and compelling. And you go all the way back to the founding fathers, and then before then, really the birth of democracy. What's missing from current coverage, do you think?
Well, the principles that made this country great, individual responsibility, and not looking to government. The founding fathers and their fathers were people who fled Europe, fled class privilege, aristocracy, undemocratic mindset. They came here. We've been stealing the best people of the world for 200 years. And we did well for the first 150 years, and we've completely flipped the notion of America as freedom from government, as America as freedom with government. That's a completely new notion. It's really socialism.
So that really puts government in the kind of the problem-solving role. I mean, if Americans are lacking health care, we impose, some new proposals. If the education is of poor quality, we impose some solutions there. So isn't it a good thing to get the government involved?
The government can't solve personal problems. When Jerry Brown ran for president, I think in 1976, I found a little book at City Lights Books, a famous bookstore in San Francisco. They published him. He says our founding fathers really had it right. You have to be responsible. You can't ask government to solve all these problems. We're asking it. That's since 1976 he's saying this. He should be running for president today. He would have my vote. You can't do that. You can't solve problems by spending money, because problems are personal. Someone didn't get up in the morning.
Well, again, even from the East Coast over here, I've read so much about the homeless situation there in San Francisco, and isn't there a role for government to take care of people who are out there on the sidewalks and so on? Isn't that a help? I mean, we need a little compassion, right?
Well, of course, Democrats and Republicans are both compassionate. Republicans say the private sector should handle the nation's problems. Charities and philanthropy, that's how it's always been. That's our strength. And the Democrats say, no, the government should handle the problems. Social workers should handle who themselves are almost not employable in the private sector, are working for government. They're going to solve the nation's problems. It's not possible.
Yeah, no, certainly a thought-provoking point there. Let's continue this conversation in just a moment. This is a San Francisco Conservative. I am speaking with a San Francisco Conservative, David Parker. I'm Tom Martin, and we appreciate our audience there on KSFO and David's loyal readers, his contributions to the Epoch Times. We'll be back soon.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative. This is Tom Martin, co-host, and we are here with author David Parker, right there in San Francisco. It makes sense. We certainly should hope for that.
The inflation, the inflation you have, I'm suffering myself. I have vast real estate holdings. My income dropped $1 million with interest rates having doubled my net income. So if I'm mad, a lot of people are mad. That rise in interest rates, Joe Biden is going to be credited for that.
Yeah. Well, apparently a lot of Joe Biden's advisors, campaign advisors and so on, are saying we need to get out there on the campaign trail and remind people about Bidenomics. Again, you're an investor, you're investing in real estate, kind of sticking your neck out there and, betting on how the economy will go. Isn't the economy strong now?
It is, but we don't have inflation, but we're calling it inflation. During COVID, the factory shut down worldwide and demand increased threefold. Nobody was spending money during COVID. People have savings accounts and they're demanding goods and services now, and there's no supply of them. It's causing prices to rise in all fields. And then President Biden throws trillions, $2 or $3 trillion into the economy to help people who need money. But that's inflationary.
Well, some of the top economists I've heard say, we don't need to worry about inflation, and they're kind of. I think the economists are mixed on the recession, possibility of recession. What do you make of their economic forecasts?
Well, I always listen to economists and then do the opposite. They're always wrong, always wrong. They can't be right. They themselves are academics. My thumb is on the pulse of the economy. I always know what's happening. I'm making offers on office buildings right now. I'm right on it. Economists, they're not invested. They don't have no skin in the game. They have no idea you cannot know what's going on in any field unless you're part of it. You can't just sit back in your office and sit on your computer and type opinions. They're always wrong. But the right person will come across, and it will be a Republican and not a Democrat in the future.
Do you think the Supreme Court is going to play a role in this election also?
No, I don't buy those arguments. The Supreme Court has always been independent. They owe, but they are independent. Just in general, within 30 years, the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the president will all be Republican within 30 years, and probably less, and they'll be more moderate than they are now. But something has to shake it up, and the shake-up is Donald Trump. He's not the right person, but he's the only person that's going to shake it up.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, the powerful argument there. Let's continue in just a minute. This is a San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, lifelong journalist, asking thought-provoking questions. And with me is author David Parker right there in San Francisco. We appreciate our audience on KSFO radio and David's readers, as David is a contributor to the Epoch Times. David is also the author of Income and Wealth, a San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. And we'll continue in just a moment.
In the heart of the vibrant city by the bay, meet a voice that's challenging the status quo. David Parker, author of A San Francisco Conservative and Rome 476. David Parker, a true San Franciscan with a conservative vision for the future, is a voice that resonates with our nation's founding fathers. Freedom from government, not with government. For 40 years, he taught in San Francisco's inner-city schools, acquired a large real estate portfolio, and worked as a professional musician. The Dave Parker Sextet performs every week. It's time for a fresh perspective, one that values fiscal responsibility, individual responsibility. David Parker is not only an academic, his thumb is on the pulse of the economy. He brings real solutions to all the problems affecting our nation. Learn more at davidparkeressays.com and get a free chapter to any of his books, A San Francisco Conservative, Rome 476, and Income and Wealth. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin. My co-host is author David Parker, right there in San Francisco. We are talking about the demise of the Democratic Party. And David, I can't help but think that, some of the politicians in Washington are really on the pulse of what the American people are asking for. I'm thinking especially of, say, Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Free college for everyone, all kinds of things like that. I mean, don't you really think that movement will prevail?
Well, it can't. Free college is not solving the problem of why college education is so expensive. It's just a democratic solution of throw money at it. Give college students money so they can afford it. DeSantis in Florida did a lot of good things in Florida. Is why he got as far as he did. He got the cost of college entrance lowered, because what colleges are doing, they're doing research in fields that are not even sometimes of the university, and those research is very expensive, and they give donors who provide huge buildings and provide funds for research and matched by the government. And who's paying for that? College tuition. Students are coming to learn about the humanities, the Greeks and the Romans in the Age of Enlightenment, and they're paying for scientific research and for government research, military research. It's in their tuition. That's why it's so expensive. And maybe they should just change that.
Well, do you think, I can't resist asking, do you think our college campuses are really our hope for the future? I mean, at least they're places where ideas are being exchanged and the students are open-minded about new ideas and whatnot. I mean, isn't that, it should give us some hope for the future, right?
Well, students between the age of 18 and 22 are learning things for the first time, and they more or less open-minded. At the same time, there's as you're probably insinuating, there's a cancel and woke movement in college where students want a safe environment and they don't want to hear ideas that they're not used to hearing. That's not the norm, and that's going to wind its way out. I'm from the 60s, a political activist, a civil rights activist, and Mario Savio was a person who I thought did a good job. He said to the University of California at Berkeley, stop protecting us like you're our parents, which is what students want the university today to be, a parent. We want to know what's happening in Vietnam. We want to know what's happening in Jim Crow South. Don't shield us from all this. We want to know. Tell us the truth. And today, the students are saying, we don't want to know. We don't want to hear anything that we didn't learn from reading Beatrice Potter, Peter Rabbit. If it's not in Peter Rabbit, we don't want to know about it. And if a conservative person comes on campus, a pie in his face right away.
Well, you'd mentioned Governor DeSantis of Florida a few minutes ago in our conversation today. And I mean, do you really approve of what he's doing there? Apparently, they're banning books. They're banning Elie Wiesel. They're banning, Toni Morrison and other African American authors. And is that really acceptable?
I didn't know they were doing that. In fact, I wonder if that's really true. They're trying to ban books that are so far left that they're out of touch with the nation. Toni Morrison's not so far left that she's out of touch with the nation, and the Holocaust has to be taught. And Elie Wiesel is not controversial. I don't believe that's really true. But they are banning left-wing books. And Congress doesn't represent the United States. The voting districts have been so gerrymandered that no liberal runs against a conservative, and no conservative runs against a liberal. So who wins? The most liberal and the most conservative. And then they find themselves in Congress and they can't pass any legislation. They can't talk to each other. They're so far apart, when in fact the nation is not that far apart. The nation is moderate, and the future will be a moderate candidate on both parties, but within 30 years, it'll be moderate, right, a little more to the right, and that's the future.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a good thing that we're in the midst of an election year this year. The primaries are underway. The candidates, whether it's Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Joe Biden, even getting out there on the campaign trail and really going face to face with the people. I think there's a lot of wisdom in Washington, and if people can really meet their elected representatives, they might realize that things are not as bad as we feared. What is your thoughts about all of that?
I'm saying things are bad as we fear, because the candidates are so far apart. They can't even talk to each other. And that shouldn't be. The nation is moderate. The government should also be moderate. And that doesn't mean compromise on every issue, but it means compromise. The left will compromise occasionally if something's important to the right. In exchange, the right will compromise on some issue that's important to the left. That's how compromise. You don't just compromise and demasculate every issue. Each side gets to have something from time to time, but that's not happening. It's not a working Congress. We have government agencies like the EPA and the Department of Education. Those are partisan. They're running the country. They're making decisions because Congress can't make and won't make decisions. They don't want to be afraid of being not reelected. So that has to go.
So you'd cut back on those agencies. You think that what's the year that you mentioned in your books, 1933?
Well, that's when we started government. When Bill Clinton won in Arkansas for governor the first time, he spoke with his arms up in the air with joy. There's so much government can do to make things better. He couldn't wait to start with Hillary at his side. This is so un-American, so wrong.
Yeah, well, something to think about for sure. Let's leave it there for the moment before you wrap up shortly. This is a San Francisco Conservative. We appreciate our audience on KSFO Radio. I'm Tom Martin, lifelong journalist, with David Parker, author of Income and Wealth, San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. By the way, you can get free chapters of all of these books on David's website, davidparkeressays.com. That's davidparkeressays.com. And we will be back with a closing thought in just a moment.
I have a quick question. Mark, can you cut out when Tom says, I ask provocative questions or whatever his words were, I hope? Because the I hope just takes away your credibility, and I'm wondering if you can take it out, do you think? Or do we
Just
need to
the
do
word I hope? Yeah.
Yes, and I think it might have happened at least twice.
Okay.
Yeah, your questions are provocative, Tom. You don't need to put the hope in there.
That's right.
Okay.
What your meeting is with Katie, right?
Kathy.
Hold on.
We're not quite finished recording, right?
Yeah.
So is she in the waiting room?
Yeah. I just sent her a note. Okay. I've sent her 2 notes. So what I want you to do is, did you see my note to you?
No, I can't. Sometimes I can't really do that.
Oh, All right. If you say, when you say visit us, hey, write to us. Let us know what you think, and we'll respond. David will respond to each email.
Okay.
It's real good interactive. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, and so for the final segment, I just thought I would ask David to tell us a little bit about his books, the intention of writing his essays and what he brings to the table. Is that okay?
We don't have time. Wait.
Oh, we don't?
Or no.
I can say that pretty.
Got a minute and a half.
I can say that in a minute.
Okay. Well, you have a minute. David has Tom has 30 seconds.
Okay, well,
So,
I'll keep my part short, but I think
yeah, and then
I think it's important.
and mention the and David, if you want to say, hey, if you have any comments, you can say it too. Write to me. It's
We'd love
okay.
to hear from you. Yeah.
All right, here we go, guys. And 5 seconds, take it away.
Welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative. I'm Tom Martin, my co-host, author David Parker. And David, just to wrap up today's conversation, tell us a little bit about your intention when you work on your essays and books. What's the goal there?
The theme in all my writing is that the founding fathers got it right. For 90 or 120 days, a bunch of geniuses got together and they looked closely at first century Rome, which is a civilization that's higher than us today, and they looked closely at 5th century Athens, BC, and closely at their own Age of Enlightenment, and created a one-page document that is timeless, that accounts for anything and everything that could possibly happen in the future. They rose to the occasion, and a pinnacle document. A step in any direction from the Constitution is a step down. A step from a pinnacle is a step down. It's a step back to aristocracy, to progressive leadership. It's completely wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. No, your books are brilliant. I love them. And again, having spent most of my career focused on kind of the news of the day, just the idea that I can delve into the chapters from history that you share with us in your books really expands my understanding of how the world works. So I'm very grateful. So thanks everyone for joining us. Again, this is a San Francisco Conservative, Tom Martin and David Parker. David is the author of Income and Wealth, The San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. You can read about his books and get free chapters at his website, davidparkeressays.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.